Yes, good afternoon. Today is September the 3rd, Friday. And today we're going to continue our discussion of the Renaissance because, no, I'm sorry, today is September the 3rd, which is Thursday. Sorry. We're going to continue our discussion of the Renaissance because there's no such thing as waiting or stopping or taking a break. We have no choice. So let's begin. There we are. Come here, you. Yes. No, it begins by saying, look on the map, page 320, which being. Now, what did I do with? Oh, I know what it is. Which, being the intelligent guy I am, yes, there is the map that we're making reference to. Just to show you a couple of quick things, these two cities, Venice, Genoa. You might recall Genoa as the birthplace of Christopher Columbus, but for now, both Genoa and Venice were the two primary trading cities of the Renaissance. They dominated the spice trade. And like I may have inferred yesterday, any country shipper who tried to hone in on that spice trade, these two countries, these two city states, had the wherewithal to blow them out of the water, and they did that. You can actually sort of compare it to the drug trade. It is so lucrative that criminal cartels battle each other, fight each other to be able to sell their products. And so, yes, getting back, please. Yes. So, notice that Italy is divided during the Renaissance into many semi independent states, but was dominated by five major states. Milan, which we looked at just now, dominated northern Italy. You see Milan there in the pink. Back to the other hand, yes. It was ruled over by a family known as the Sforza, who were renowned as condottieri. The word condottieri is an Italian word. It means soldier. Along with the Visconti, the Sforzas had been very successful at centralizing their authority over Milan and pumping in large amounts of revenue, cash, generated, among other things, by taxing the very lucrative spice trade from the Far East. It's just hard for us to wrap our head around the idea that spice, peppers, and cinnamon, and bay leaf, and things that are in your mom's spice cabinet at home were so very lucrative. But once again, they were so lucrative that when the Italians sold them to the rest of Europe, they counted them out like that. And so, yeah, Milan and Florence worked together to keep the other large spice importing republic, the Venetians, in check. Venice ruled northeastern Italy. I just showed you Venice. It's there in the yellow. Venice is that city which you've probably seen in pictures and movies that doesn't have streets so much as it has canals. It is a architectural miracle. The city was built originally in a lagoon, basically a swamp marshland, and they hammered hundreds of thousands of oak trunks down into the clay to form the foundation of the city. If you've ever seen pictures of Florence, actually has been, I'm sorry, Venice. Venice. Venice has actually been having problems in recent year with global warming and the rising sea levels. You might have seen some pictures. You should Google it sometimes. Flooding in Venice. And it's not just storm surge that causes it. It's just the city's sinking as well as the seas are rising. But yes, Venice is the other large spice-producing city-state. Venice, the Republic of Venice. Right there we are. Very good. Along with Genoa, it's Milanese, spice-imported Milanese. Genoa is in Milan. Venice is in the Republic of Venice. Spice importing counterpart, the Venetians were very powerful and dominated the lucrative spice importing trade. Venice was very aggressive in trying to consolidate its land holdings and trade routes throughout Central Europe. See, I mean, the spice was brought into Venice and Genoa, and from Venice and Genoa, it was then sent out to the rest of Europe, and the rest of Europe paid big dollars. So, Florence was the largest and most important city in Tuscany. Florence, yeah. Florence was strong-armed by the Medici family. I should have D-E. I have Medici. The proper word is the Medici. In Italian, when someone's name is either D-E, or D-A, it means that they are from a certain place. For example, once again, I think I said it before, Leonardo da Vinci, his name means he's from the village of Vinci. People who are Dutch often have the prefix van in their names, V-A-N, it means from. People who are German have the prefix der, D-E-R, often. Anyway, French, D-E. So, the Medici family, who, while maintaining the appearance of a republican form of government, ruled the government as an oligarchy. In other words, they pretended to be a republic, egalitarian republic that, allowed lots of people to have say in government, but actually, Florence was ruled by this family of bankers, the de Medici. And it says they ruled the government as an oligarchy. I like big words, and I cannot lie. Oligarchy, hopefully break it down into its Greek word roots, is taken from the word archon, which means to rule, as in monarch, as in oligarchy, of course, as in anarchy. But yes, an oligarchy means rule by a small group. Florence, under Lorenzo de' Medici, who was also called Lorenzo the Magnificent, and once again, these guys were thugs. They were every bit the Cosa Nostra mafia type warlords as the Corleones ever thought about being. So, under Lorenzo the Magnificent, made Florence the cultural center for a while until Rome took over of the Renaissance. For a while, the young Michelangelo was commissioned, that means paid, by Lorenzo de' Medici to live inside the compound and to create works of art for him. Because when you're rich and powerful, you got to spend your money on something. And they spent theirs on Michelangelo, along with other artists. Although it is, and I think I mentioned this yesterday, it is worth saying that actually Lorenzo de' Medici and Michelangelo had a falling out later on, and for a year Michelangelo had to hide, and because Lorenzo de' Medici was looking for him to kill him. All right, part D. Then there were the Papal States. Let's go back to Mr. Map right here. You see the Papal States there in green? The Papal States were a physical country that were actually owned by Rome. Rome being the Roman Catholic Church. That's Rome, by the way. And yes, this is Rome. The Rome we've been talking about for quite a while, et cetera, et cetera. The Rome of the Roman Catholic Church. And this was the country that they owned. Okay, get back to that. So, the Papal States are a region that is exactly what the name denotes. They were land holdings of a shrinking political entity known as the Roman Catholic Church. Great Schism. I don't know. I think I saw that term on somebody's test. I can't remember whose, though. It may have been yours. I don't know. The Great Schism was a time when there were two popes. When Yeah, one thing, see, I'm telling you, this is one of the reasons. This is one of the reasons why um, why Catholic school kids have an advantage over non-Catholic school kids because they take religion every day of their Catholic school education lives, and they would know. I would ask, how are popes chosen? And the answer is, popes are chosen by a group of men called cardinals. Popes, cardinals, archbishops, bishops, priests. But yes. By the way, you do know, of course, you do know, you've written this somewhere down, that the Roman Catholic Church, the organization of the Roman Catholic Church, the hierarchy of the Roman Catholic Church, was based on the old Roman government. The Pope was the emperor, and then you had regional governors, and et cetera, et cetera. And and so yeah, and so just under the Pope, uh, there were people who were called cardinals, and that was the next tier of people. And it was technically, today it's called the College of Cardinals. And the College of Cardinals are supposed to, and do, represent in the Roman Catholic Church today everywhere in the world. There is an American cardinal. In fact, there may be more than one. I don't know. But I'm sure there are some from South America. Well, like the current Pope. The current Pope is the first Pope ever not to be from Europe. Yeah. hmm Pope Francis. That's another thing that they would know. But anyway, so when the College of Cardinals, getting back to the Great Schism, Mr. Horton, thank you so much. When the College of Cardinals got together to vote on who the next Pope would be, and remember back then, the Pope was really, in fact, back then he was called the King Pope because, like I said, waged war, collected taxes, very rich man. Um, a French group of the College of Cardinals elected a French Pope, and the Italian group elected an Italian Pope. And for a while, there were two popes, and that was called the Great Schism. It really, once again, it was one of those things that discredited the church. It made the church, the Roman Catholic Church, who was supposed to be about taking care of the spiritual needs, saving the souls of people. It made the Roman Catholic Church look like Republicans and Democrats, to be real honest. It discredited them. It debased the office of the papacy. And eventually, the College of Cardinals met again, said this is nuts, and they basically kicked those two popes out and elected a third pope that they all kind of agreed on. Okay, and that leads us to this thing called the Babylonian Captivity, another chink in the church's army. The Babylonian Captivity was a period of time when the French king, Francis I, I believe his name was, wanted to teach the Pope a lesson. And so he forced the Pope, and I don't remember which Pope it was, to leave Rome and to come live in the French city of Avignon, Avignon. And all that showed was, once again, that the Pope was a political figure. All right, part C. Since pre-Roman days, the peoples of the southern reaches of Italy were looked down upon as a bunch of impoverished rubes by the peoples of northern Italy. And I'm telling you, that that situation lasts until this very day. I mean, the area I just showed you on the map, which is now northern Italy, if you're a tourist, that's where you go to. Southern Italy, I mean, it's really backwards. And in fact, I'm always watching this. Show on television. It comes on KET called Focus on Europe, and they did a report. Look at that. Can you believe I spelled Italy with a small I? They did a report about the fact that many of the towns in southern Italy, because the economy is in the tank, and there were no business there, no jobs, many of the towns of southern Italy are being depopulated, meaning that the young people once they get the wherewithal, move. They go to places where there are jobs. And the only people left are the old people, and they're dying. But at any rate, even during this time, the peoples of northern Italy looked upon the peoples of southern Italy as a bunch of hillbillies. And that will be important later on when we finally start talking about the unification of Italy. Trust me, the peoples of southern Italy didn't like their northern counterparts either. Nobody likes to be called a hillbilly. Anyway, as he sits here with his bandana on. So the kingdom of Naples represented the island of Sicily, which I don't have that right away. But if you look at a map, the island of Sicily is right off the toe of Italy. And then the kingdom of Naples included that, but it also included the southern boot of Italy. The good thing about doing this is I fix my little mistakes. What did I do? I misspelled Italy too. Yes. By and large, the impoverished and culturally backwards was since it had little extra income to invest in artistic advancement of any way. And once again, look what I wrote in all caps. I have a way of doing that when I want you to really understand something. Know that there'll be no country. I mean, Italy is more of a geographical reference to the Italian peninsula rather than a country. Please understand that there'll be no country known as Italy until 1873. Technically, Italy was supposed to be united under what was called, there's that word again, the Holy Roman Empire, which technically was supposed to have stretched from southern Italy and extended into what is now Germany. It was an idea. It was supposed to be a revival of the old Roman Empire, just ruled by RCC, Roman Catholic Church. When I get tired of typing, I use a lot of abbreviations. RCC, Roman Catholic Church. And so instead of, however, of uniting Italy, Germany, and Switzerland, it actually kept all three regions weak and disunited and fighting each other and fighting the authority of the Holy Roman Empire until they were finally united in the 19th century. Okay, back up here. Aside from the major states governing Italy, there were several small and fiercely independent city-states, normally ruled over by tyrannical warlord-type individuals. The city, and quickly, where's that at? The city of Urbino, which you see, there it is. Urbino. I won't be changing this every time, but yeah. In other words, all these cities are located in northern Italy. They were made up of small independent city-states. The city of Urbino was a small city which often filled, look at that, who writes this? Who proofreads you, Mr. Horton? Filled its coffers. You say, what does that mean, Mr. Horton? Put money in the town treasury, put money in the city treasury by hiring itself out to other city-states as condottieri. In other words, the city of Urbino made its young men go and fight for other cities, and the city of Urbino got paid. Okay? Most famous soldier, statesman, ruler of Urbino was Federico di Montefeltro. Picture on 321, not worth looking at. Other cities were Mantua, Ferrara, and Lucca. The Peace of Lodi. That's another word I think I saw in somebody's test. The Peace of Lodi was an agreement amongst the 5 biggest cities not to fight each other. Yeah, because they did a lot of that. Also make notice of the work of, a lot of mistakes here, Horton. Of the work of Battista Sforza, who was the wife of Federico. And Isabella d'Este. With their husbands going on so many military campaigns, these women were often were called up to rule in their stead, which was a very rare thing. in the Renaissance, a very rare thing because of the subservient role of women in Renaissance society. Okay, since Italy was divided into these rather small principalities, Italy became very easy pickings for the two larger dynasties at the time, the French and the Spanish. There we go. The French and the Spanish. King Charles VIII of France, he was a member of the Valois dynasty. Okay, dynasties. One of the things that may drive you kind of bonkers in modern European history is you've got to kind of keep score of the dynasties of the major countries. Yeah. Right now, as it says there, France was under the control of the Valois dynasty. The dynasty that we will be mostly concerned with will be the Bourbons. Yeah, the Bourbon dynasty. But yeah, so we do know what a dynasty is, don't we? That's when rule is maintained within a family for several generations, so it's called a dynasty. Anyway, King Charles VIII of France had been invited to help intervene in Italian disagreements by Ludovico Sforza of Milan. And so you say, if you don't get that, so Ludovico Sforza, the chief strongman of the Milanese province, Genoa, etc. Okay, there were disagreements, there was infighting, and so he invites the King of France. Would you mind bringing your soldiers in and kind of help settle this thing down? And the French king said, "Oh yeah, sure, yeah, I'll do that." And what he did, he used this as an opportunity to get a foothold in rich Italian territory. I mean, because Italy was rather prosperous aside from the spice trade. They were also heavily involved in printing, wool from sheep, mining. Uh, and so this guy saw this as an opportunity to get a foothold on this rather lucrative property. He brought 30,000 men and invaded much of northern Italy. Other Italians invited Ferdinand of Aragon. If you remember that name, Ferdinand of Aragon, yeah, it's the same guy that helped bankroll Christopher Columbus to help out. And then the Spanish were dominating Italy. And what eventually happens is that Spain and France start fighting each other, and Italy just becomes a battleground. Yeah, France under Francis I and Spain under Charles I continued this battle for Italy while Italy suffered the consequences. Yeah. That means Italy was a battleground. In 1527, the Spanish monarch Charles I sacked and burned the city of Rome. And in fact, coming to witness that sacking and burning was none other than Martin Luther. Somebody we hadn't mentioned yet, but we will. And so, yeah, Italy, as it says there, will then remain disunited for 3 full centuries after that, and not become a united country until 1873. All right. One positive thing to come out of this chaos of Italian disunity was the advent of this thing we call modern diplomacy. As it says there, diplomacy is the art, science, technique of communication between governments as an alternative to actual warfare. Better to talk to your enemies than to go to war. Wars are expensive. The Italian city-states were the first to employ resident ambassadors. In other words, I mean, if you've ever been to Washington, D.C., in Washington, D.C., there's this place. It's an avenue. It's called Embassy Row. And down this long avenue, there's nothing but one embassy after another. And it's interesting. Embassies operate under different laws. For example, American police or American military or American officials cannot enter the embassy without being invited. And I mean, that's led to some interesting questions. For example, oftentimes people who have legal immunity because of their embassy status will commit some crime out in Washington or wherever, and then go hide in the embassy. And as long as they're in the embassy, they're safe. In fact, I forget the name of the guy, the WikiLeaks guy, hid in I think it was in the Portuguese embassy in London for well over a year until the Portuguese finally kicked him out because he basically was trashing the place, But yeah, so and embassies are like a piece of the country inside the boundaries of another country. I mean, you go to Washington, there's a big Russian embassy, a big Chinese embassy, a big British embassy, and then there's smaller embassies representing other countries. For example, my wife's niece, my wife's niece, my wife's from Colombia, and my wife's niece, who is Colombian, actually works in the American embassy in Colombia. She works for the American government. You and me pay her with our taxes. Interesting. So, the Italian city-states were the first to employ resident ambassadors in each other's capitals to relay messages, but it has long been known and halfway accepted that embassies often spy on each other. Yeah, to relay messages, but also to collect information. That is, I don't know how this got there, and that's a mess. Anyway, of course, one of the standards of MIHAP, Modern European History AP. You are familiar with that, right? MIHAP, Modern European History AP. And the Renaissance in Italy was a minor nobleman by the name of Nicolo Macchiavelli. There have been so many questions where Machiavelli, and you're going to learn that name Machiavelli, and people use the reference, it's Machiavellian. It's not a compliment. So this guy Machiavelli, Nicolo Machiavelli, he really didn't do a whole lot. He was a minor nobleman, but what he did, he wrote a book, a small pamphlet. Literally, I have one copy over there. And basically, the pamphlet was in a place like Italy where there was so much intrigue and so much backstabbing, assassinations, and all this kind of stuff. Basically, it was the science of how a ruler should rule. So he writes this book. It's a handbook. It's a guide. How should a ruler conduct business? How should a ruler survive? Yes. I mean, that was wrong. 12. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. Machiavelli is credited with a more realistic view of the nature of man and government than anyone else before him and many people since. In other words, this guy got it. He understood how a ruler should conduct himself, how he should stay in power. His lasting legacy is contained in a small book called The Prince, which is a study on how rulers rule. So to condense it down, I mean, I did all the hard work for it, condense it down to its most basic premises. It says basically two things. Let's look at the first one. Society is driven by the higher ideas. I'm sorry, that should be society is, there it is, I knew. Society is not driven. Have you fixed that in your notes yet? Society is not driven. I'll give you a second. Society is not driven by the higher ideas of religion and morality, but rather is determined by the wants and desires of men. Hmm. What in the world, Mr. Horton? What does that mean? Well, it basically means this. Why are things the way they are? Why? For example, why, as I leave Ryle today and drive to my home, driving up 42 towards the Union Kroger, why can't I just, I'm really in a hurry to get home. Why can't I just drive 90 miles an hour? Hmm? Yeah, why can't I just open her up and drive 90 miles an hour? I guess my truck could do 90 miles an hour. Probably could. Wouldn't be safe because it's one of those trucks that's set up real high. And, yeah. But why? Why can't I just drive 90 miles an hour? Or why can't, on that same stretch of road, which as you know is 4-lane, why can't I drive 5 miles an hour? You can't do that either. And of course, the answer is it's not safe. Well, who said it was safe? Who decides what safe is? Who says that, for example, I can't come to your house and steal your collection of I used to always tell a joke right about this time, and I would mention somebody, some hip, deaf, and jamming singer. But I got to be honest, I don't know any hip, deaf, and jamming singers. I don't know who is popular now singing. And I would say, uh, what's to keep me from coming to your house and stealing all your Taylor Swift memorabilia? How's that? What's to keep me from doing that? Why can't I just do that? Well, is it because doing such thing would be wrong? And Machiavelli said, no, that's not the reason you can't do that. That's not the reason you can't do that. The reason you can't do that is because men, and by the way, he meant men, he did not include women, uh, men have agreed upon some compromise. And I don't mean, it's not just about driving down US 42, it's not just about stealing your Taylor Swift memorabilia, it's about everything. Men have reached a compromise of what you can and cannot do. Men have reached a compromise about what they can live with. And men did it. And notice what it says, by the wants and desires of men. That society is not driven by higher ideas of religion. It's not driven by the Bible. It's not driven by some code of morality. It is driven by the wants and desires of men. What do men want? Hmm? 3 things: sex, money, and power. Yeah, that's it. That's about right. What do men want? Sex, money, and power. And because everybody can't have sex, money, and power, men have arranged a compromise of what they can live with. The compromise is not the same everywhere. Trust me. But Machiavelli is saying it's by the wants and desires of men, not because of some code, not because of the 10 Commandments, not because it's right or wrong, the wants and desires of men. 2, this is a little bit harder. A ruler is judged on the basis of his success. You say, what does that mean? Well, if we were in class, I would do some long, drawn out example of how, you own a business and you have 2 workers Two salesmen. So you own a business, you have two salesmen. And every quarter, 4 times a year, every quarter you bring the salesman in and you discuss how well or poorly they performed at selling your product. Widgets, we'll say it's widgets. How about that? And so you have the first salesman comes into your office and he's very prompt, he's on time. He is dressed impeccably professionally, he or she, dressed in, impeccably professionally, and he has a great reputation of representing the company. He, shows up for every appointment on time. He follows every email with a phone call, every phone call with a personal visit. He's courteous to all his customers, and for the past 5 quarters, this salesman's sales have dropped 25% each of the last 5 quarters, continue to shrink and shrink. And you have a talk about, what's going on. And then your appointment time's over, and in comes the second salesman. Actually, he doesn't. The second salesman comes in, and he has a meeting with you, say at 10 o'clock, and he drags his butt in there at 10:30. Plops down in a chair, throws his feet on your desk. And by the way, you notice the stench of alcohol on the guy, and you can tell that he's wearing clothes he probably slept in last night. The man probably hit the bars last night, or woman, sorry. And, you start talking about the sales of the past year, and in the middle of your conversation with him, when you're making a point, he does this, pulls out this thing, and starts having a conversation. And the conversation is not related to business, it's a personal conversation. And he's laughing and he's chatterboxing, and you keep trying to say something, and he does this again, and until said conversation is over. Puts the phone back, and he says, "Oh yeah, where were we?" So you continue your conversation with the second salesman, and finally you look and you notice that his sales, which make up 75% of the company's profits, continue to increase by 25% every quarter. But you can't stand the guy. So here's your question. You have two salesmen. What they sell puts food on your table, feeds your kids, send your kids to college, etc., etc. What do you do with the two salesmen? What do you do with the two salesmen? Now, it's kind of funny. I always like posing that question to a lot of AP students. They're so nice. They say, talk to the guy who's a slob and get him to clean up his act, and the other guy just encourage him to keep working hard. No, you don't. You fire the neat guy, and if that second guy wants a raise, you give it to him. Why? Look what it says. A ruler is judged on the basis of his success because he wins. And that's what Machiavelli said. It doesn't matter how you get from point A to point B. What matters is that you get from point A to point B, and you get there the fastest. And so, yeah, to be honest, I don't want to start talking about politics now, but you see a lot of that in politics. You sure see a lot of it in business. It's about winning. Okay, part D. Who was Cesare Borgia? Cesare Borgia was the nephew of the next guy, Pope Alexander VI. Pope Alexander VI was a Borgia. That was their family name. He was a nephew of Pope Alexander VI, and Pope Alexander VI made him a cardinal in the Roman Catholic Church. And why is his name worth jotting down there? Well, he was a nephew of the Pope, and he was promoted because he was a nephew of the Pope. And that is something we call, wait for it, nepotism. Nepotism. And I don't know what the Latin phrase is for nephew, but you can see the relationship between the two words, nephew and nepotism. Nepotism is the practice of hiring and or promoting relatives. A practice, by the way, that is forbidden in the Boone County school system. I know that last year, as you know, our superintendent was Dr. Poe. His daughter is a very, very good social studies teacher. She teaches at Petaluma County, though. She can't teach in Boone County. Why? Because she's related to the superintendent. It's against the law. That would be nepotism. And so this year, could she get a job here? Probably. But anyway, Pope Alexander VI. Yeah. Pope Alexander VI, Pope Julius II, they are called the Renaissance popes. And Pope Alexander VI reached a new low in depravity. I mean, the Roman Catholic Church had become, over the years, had become more and more and more morally bankrupted. And so, yeah. Pope Alexander VI, see, wrap your head around this. Pope Alexander VI was father to his own grandchild. Yeah, that. Yeah, and it's pretty common knowledge. Point of the matter is that everybody else is looking at the church and say, first of all, father to his own grandchild? Oh yeah, his daughter, beautiful woman. Her name Lucretia Borgia. Yes, beautiful woman that Pope Alexander VI used to use, not just, of course, sexually, but also to influence people with her talents, if you get my drift. But yeah, Pope Alexander VI, decadent. I mean, the man used to hold orgies in the Vatican. Yeah. I mean, what we're seeing here is we're seeing what the Roman Catholic Church, power corrupts. And absolute power corrupts, absolutely. The Roman Catholic Church, under people like Alexander VI, had long been corrupted, and that corruption trickled down. Okay, let's continue. Roman numeral 13. For almost 1,000 years in European civilization, thought was predicated on faith in God. It was considered sinful and even dangerous to question the edicts of the church. It was dangerous because if you questioned the edicts of the church, there was a good chance you'd get burned at the stake. Yeah. Three great intellectual forces at work at the time were individualism, secularism, and the literary movement known as humanism. Note that all of these espouse a separation of the church and an emphasis on human feelings. Petrarch, once again, referred to the Middle Ages as the Dark Ages. He did that because he felt that the Middle Ages were a period of intellectual inactivity, and especially when you compare it to the ancient Greeks and Romans. Classical learning, he felt, was the best learning. And you say, what's classical learning? It was the learning that came from Greece and Rome. Remember, they're the classical civilization. Petrarch said, Christ is my God. Cicero is the prince of the language. However you say, who's Cicero? Cicero was a Roman writer. Yeah. Interesting guy, Cicero. He wrote a lot of things in Rome, and like, for example, he called Julius Caesar every woman's man and every man's woman, which was probably true. But anyway, the first Italian humanist to promote a knowledge of classical Greek was Leonardo Bruni. Bruni's work inspired interest in the works of the Greeks, Plato, Thucydides, who was the great Greek historian, Euripides, the great Greek playwright, and Sophocles, the other Greek playwright. Neoplatonism, once again, learn to understand words by dividing them. Neo means new. Plato refers to the great Greek philosopher Plato. Neoplatonism is a renewed interest in the study of Plato's philosophy. Push on. Thank you. Pantheism was another idea that cropped up during this time. Pantheism was an idea that God is to be found everywhere. Once again, break it down. Pan means everywhere. Theo means God or religion. Hermeticism is the idea that science, not science, but what they took for science is everywhere. All right, Roman numeral 14. Renaissance education was in many ways like the classical Greek idea of an educated man. The classical Greek idea. And you need to know what the classical Greek idea was. As I said, there are some women received training in the Renaissance, but I'm telling you, women by and large, what was it? One person said during the Enlightenment that an educated woman is like an antique gun. Beautiful to look at, but absolutely useless. Yeah. But anyway, and I hope you don't mind. Miss Harton said that women are useless. I did not say that. That's what I forget who the guy was. So anyway, the Renaissance idea of education was not to create scholars, but to turn out practical citizens who were prepared to meet the challenges of living in their modern world. In other words, the Greek idea, the Renaissance idea, was that proper education was to create the well-rounded individual, someone who could do everything. We would also call it, and you are writing this down, we would also call it the liberal arts education. Liberal, the liberal arts education. Oh, what's that, Mr. Horton? Well, it's like this. I love teaching you guys because I know that most of you, if not all of you, will go to college. And when you go to college, will sign up for classes, and you might be majoring in chemistry or some kind of mathematics or something else, biology or something scientific, or nursing or whatever. And the first year they put you in English 101. They make you take a history course, unless you've taken AP Euro and passed the test. Then you don't have to take that course. And they make you take some kind of art course. And you say, but I want to be a nurse. I want to be, a dentist. What do I need with art? Well, the idea is the liberal arts idea, and that is to truly educate the mind. You have to educate the whole thing. They make you take PE, for goodness sake. I mean, and they got that idea from the Greeks. The ancient Greeks, the Athenians, would have their boys learn athletics, yeah, but they also learn how to sing. They also learn how to play musical instruments. They also learn how to create art. As it says there, education wants to be intellectual, physical, practical, and moral in nature. What is a Renaissance man? I am not a Renaissance man. A Renaissance man is someone who can do a lot of things and do them well. About a week ago, though, I was writing a recommendation for one of my former students, a young lady I'm very proud of. I won't mention her name. But I said, I mean, if there was ever a definition of a Renaissance man, it is this person. Because this person, I had heard about this person, you know, you guys are sophomores, and I'd heard about this person when she was a freshman, because she was a mathematics wizard already. And she also could do several other things very well. And that makes you a Renaissance man. History, speaking of academia, was written and taught from a more secular point of view, in contrast to the viewpoint of the age of faith. Okay. Finally, Francesco Gucciardini. You know what? I'm going to let you look that guy up, because tomorrow we will start with the printing press. How about that? Okay? Because I know I've talked long enough. If you have questions, please email me. I will see you again tomorrow. We really got to get through. I really want to have this first test sometime next week. And so, yeah. For that, I think I'm done for the day. Oh boy. Come on, Horton. No, that's not it.